Hello and welcome to More Tools and Cents, the show where depreciation isn't a factor because you just start at rock bottom. Today, we're going to take the super cheap turbo Miata and we're going to add a super cheap fiberglass body. Let's go. On our last episode, Crinkles, the crumbled Miata, got a turbo slapped in there for less than $500, but she was still a little lacking in the looks department.
We lost some straps, and it slid off the thing.
That's where this beauty enters the picture. After presumably a normal life as a normal car, it has a stint as an ice racer. After that, it was hung on somebody's wall as a piece of art. Now it's entering into the fourth phase of its life.
Alright, so we got a Saab Sonett body, and as you can see, there's some minor interference issues. But I think we take Mr. Sawzall and we go like, yeah, and then like, yeah, and then that should fix most of this, and then we'll see where we go from there. Alright, so we were trying to figure out how much fiberglass to trim off of this rear panel to try to make it fit, and it seemed like it was going to have to be a lot, and so eventually we decided, you know what, we're just going to get rid of all of this. It might be quasi-structural, it might be crash protection, I don't know what it is, but you know what, we're going to put it in a roll cage, so we don't need none of it. Let's cut. Whenever you're using an angle grinder, make sure you allow the fuel tank to become vented so it's safer, right? Go on. Gotta make sure all the sparks get in there, they can get back out. All right. Like this whole line needs to come down a little. And then we have to cut this back evenly. Whoopsie, that's not good for it. Oh. That.
Well, the body placement was starting to take shape, but we can't just keep this thing held up by storage bins forever. So the next step was to make some support hinges. The goal here is to make the rear section of the body hinged and removable, so we made these two pins that easily slide into their mounting points and can then be tightened down to hold the body in place. The pins are mounted to hinges so that the body can be installed thusly and then folded down into place. Hopefully later it will be removed just as easily. Now of course the front of the roof needs to attach to something as well. If only there were some kind of pre-made, simple way to attach a roof to the A-pillar of a Miata. So yes, I did go with the obvious solution of just bolting the fiberglass roof to the front portion of the soft top frame. Something that's so simple I couldn't possibly run into any kind of problem. Now that the roof clamps are temporarily attached, I need to build out the sides a little bit, and for that I need some straight, flat, clean sheet metal. If you watched our last episode about this car, you know that I put a turbo on it for as cheaply as possible. We're going to be continuing the theme here. The fiberglass body was $300, and so far everything else has been scrap pile free. Now there is a very good reason for my frugality here. aside from just not having any money. But you may have to stick around until our next episode to see what that is. For the time being, let's just put on some music and enjoy the welds. Okay, so that's one side sheet metal all done. Wait, what are you doing? Why are you looking at it like that? You know it's done and you can... No! Fine. Okay, so the doors and the rear fenders did not line up. And they really needed to. So chopping the Miata doors down to make them match up with the Saab body was definitely the right move. Just, you know, I didn't wanna. Alright, so this big hole here, this is the exhaust gas recirculator. It pulls the exhaust gases into the cabin so that the driver can be sure to breathe in enough carbon monoxide to keep them enjoying themselves while they drive. Unfortunately, this is not SCCA legal, so we're going to have to fill this hole. Now, making the metal body meet up with the fiberglass is really just a lot of cutting, bending, and shaping of metal. But again, since I need the body to be removable, there needs to be some way to adhere the two together without glue or other permanent means. Door trim molding is perfect, but that costs money. And unless I had a free car waiting its trip to the scrapyard, just sitting around. I used one small piece of molding, and that way I could space out each individual piece of sheet metal. And then after everything was done, I just used one continuous piece of molding in order to seal out all the wind noise and dirt. And first section done. Lather, rinse, repeat. Okay, not bad at all. In fact, I'm fairly happy with these results. And that means I can pause from all this bodywork and do something arguably more important: install a roll bar. I would have done this first, but without the body actually installed, I didn't know where the roofline would be, and thus I didn't know how tall the roll bar could be. Now, I'm not 100% sure what type of racing I'll be getting into next, but most of them require a roll cage, or at a minimum a roll bar on an open-top car. Now, this won't technically be an open-top car once I'm done, but if I do manage to flip this thing over, I'm pretty sure this fiberglass roof is going to offer about as much protection as a rather fluffy hat. So, with that in mind, I decided I'd like the protection of a roll bar, plus some of the added rigidity of a full cage. So what I opted to build instead is a half cage. Now, why not just go ahead and build the full cage anyway? Well, once you have a roll bar right next to your head, you really can't operate the car in anything less than a full helmet. And aside from racing, I'd also like to enjoy the occasional Sunday cruise, something I think is a bit spoiled with your head inside of a bucket. So, I decided on a half cage. Door bars down low to protect you in a crash, nothing up high for my face to bash.
Door bar looks great, fits perfectly. It's got like a really complicated curve to it, so really happy that I got that to work out, on the first try. Yeah, first try.
As I mentioned, adding rigidity is going to be an important factor, so any place the cage happens to be near the unibody, mounting plates are going to be welded in. Now, a Miata is pretty rigid for an open car, but it's still an open car, and who doesn't need at least some help keeping things stiff? As I mentioned, I'm not sure what types of racing I'll be doing beyond just autocross, so I wanted to make sure the cage followed as many common rules as I could. I used 1.5-inch DOM tubing, made sure the main roll hoop was uninterrupted, and I used 1/8 inch metal for all the base plates. With the basic frame done, I now needed to add crossbars where the seat belts install. I wasn't sure what seat was going to be used in the car yet, so I just put the stock seat back in there and crossed my fingers. Hopefully that'll be close enough. And with everything tacked together, it was time to pull it all out and fully weld all the joints. And after the cage is fully welded itself, needs to be put back in the car, and then all of the different spreader plates need to be welded to the frame, again, all the way around. And here we go. One fully welded half cage, fully installed. Doors back on. Hey, we're finally back where we started. And that means it's time to move on to the next part of the project, the hood. Now, the track width of a Saab Sonett is a svelte 48 inches, while our Miata clocks in at a still quite trim 55. But that does mean that the whole body needs to be about 8 inches wider. Deploy the sawzall. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so maybe we're going to have to hold those parts together a little more securely than just balancing them on a wheel weld. Those chunks of wood from an old shipping crate are going to get screwed together into the fiberglass in order to hold everything in place long enough for a solid mock-up. And then after a little bit of fiddling and then some trimming of the panels, it's time to actually start fiberglassing things back together. Now this is the first bit of actual fiberglassing that we did to the car, and that, combined with the fact that we're using dubiously old resin that I got out of some guy's garage for $15 a gallon, meant that there was a little bit of a learning curve. But it's always been my experience that the best way to learn something is to do it really badly over and over again until you just suck at it less. And based on the number of times we did an absolutely foul job of laying down resin, you can tell we learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned is if you're planning on buying used resin that's probably old enough to vote, you're going to need to buy new hardener in order to make it work. But with the gift of hindsight, I can tell you that it hasn't fallen apart yet, so maybe the system is sound. Now earlier I called this a hood, but it's actually a front clamshell, meaning the fenders are permanently attached to the hood portion. Because of that, it will be hinging forward, similarly to how the rear portion hinges backwards. That means it's going to need these hood pins near the rear, which, as you can see, I got perfectly on the first try. And then it will need hinges to rotate on, installed at the front underneath of the clamshell. Once again, the scrap pile was raided, and many metal parts came together. Some milling, some lathing, some cutting, some welding, and we have hinges. And now that the hinges are made, it's time to add lightness. These brackets needed to be large enough to span the distance from the Miata sheet metal to the pre-existing mounting points on the Saab clamshell. However, they're not supporting much weight, so the hole punch was deployed to remove as much unnecessary metal as possible. And you know the old saying, ounces make pounds. But in this case, maybe not yet. But for a race car, removing half a pound from the very front end of the car is worth my time. So after the hinges are welded onto the frame, that means we're ready to install the last part of our fiberglass body. And just like that, we now have a turbocharged Miata chassis, completely disguised as a different car. Okay, so maybe it's not a car yet, but it's at least car-shaped. And if you want to see how the car shapes up, and then where we ship it out to after that, tune in for the next episode of More Tools Than Sense.